I think the leadership traits that I know have worked is being respectful. To me, every day I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everything around me. Truly is finding humor in every situation I am in.
Welcome back to the Expressions podcast by the New Indian Express, where we explore the journeys of visionaries shaping the world with their ideas and impact. Our guest today is Lathika Pai, entrepreneur, investor, and a key player in India's startup and tech ecosystem. She's currently a founder trustee at SonderConnect and a tireless advocate for women in business and venture capital. In this episode, we talk about her early influences, building inclusive leadership, and what it takes to turn bold ideas into real-world impact.
Hi Lathika, thank you for coming.
Hi Neha, lovely to be here today.
Thank you. So before the boardroom, before the unicorns, who is Lathika? Who was Lathika Pai?
So, that's an interesting question because people tease me that I have different avatars. But I think I would like to go back to school. I'm born and brought up in Bangalore, went to Sapphires, Mount Carmel for a couple of years, did my engineering at BMS. And at school, I think, was the place where I really, really was fortunate to be introduced to many passions, right? There was a lot of extracurricular that one was introduced to. I was on the athletic team, the basketball team. There was drama. So everything was really about that exposure that I got at an early stage at school. I was head girl of school and school captain. And so it's been a wonderful, wonderful childhood that I had. Also, I'm the only daughter after two sons. In an era where sons were the ones that everybody wanted, my mother really literally prayed, she says, to enter every temple possible to have a girl. So I've been brought up in an era, in time where as a girl, I was given a lot of love, lot of encouragement. And I think with the two older brothers, a lot of courage, right? So I think that was something very, very important that has formed me to be who I am today.
Wonderful. And I did read your post on Father's Day. I mean, looks like there's a family full of achievers. And I would like to hear from you, from yourself, what were the early influences of the women in your life, about your grandfather, about your father? So it would be great to hear about it.
Sure. So, my grandfather died when I was very young, but he was Minister for Law and Speaker of the Assembly. What is fascinating is that just a couple of weeks ago, in fact, the day before Father's Day, I met, a couple of lawyers, and they were mentioning my grandfather because apparently when he was speaker, and his famous line was, the opposition will have its say while the government will have its way, right? And so this is something that apparently that's quoted and even now, right? And he died in 1968. My husband's grandfather was Chief Justice of Karnataka, was offered the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India. And my father, to me, I would say the greatest influence in my early life was my father. I lost him when I was just 22. But I think the wisdom that was shared to me very early on by my father has stood me really in good stead through all my trials and tribulations. When I was 16, my mother, of course, when I was a girl, she was worried about buying jewelry for me, and because my father was in the government, and my dad was interested in shares and stocks. So he would use some of the money that he had to buy shares and stocks, and my mother would complain that I want to buy some jewelry for her. And one piece of advice he gave me is he said that it's important to realize that your brothers are good guys, but they're going to have their own families. I want you to be financially independent. And even if you get married, it's important that you always have enough money of your own. So when I got married, I told my husband, Siddharth, that, your money, my money, my money, my money, right? Even today, he complains, he grumbles actually, not, in a jocular way, saying that I have no idea how many accounts you have and how much you have. I said, and that's the way it will be. So I think it was very, very, very important that you have that financial freedom. I think my father had a phenomenal sense of humor. Yeah. Once when a friend of ours, their daughter eloped, right? I asked him, so Dad, what will you do if I elope? So he said, here's the deal. You're going to be living with this guy, not me. And if you elope, I will pretend that I'm really upset with you. But here's the good news. I would have saved so much money that I would have spent on your wedding celebrations, right? So you do what you have to do. And because I'm not going to be living this with this person. I think that was very, very wise, advice. Very forward thinking. There was absolutely no question of treating me like on parity with the boys, with my older brothers. He found out that I was borrowing friends, TVS and Lunas and zipping around town. And he decided that he wanted to buy me a TVS. So I took him on the first round, and I could hear my parents arguing at 2 in the morning, saying that, that BTS bus is going to come after my daughter, and that's it. If something happens to her, I'm going to hold you responsible. So he said, interesting. So that BTS bus will, not come after your sons, but only after your daughter, right? So if my sons can have a bike, my daughter can also have a bike. And more importantly, if anything happens to her, I don't want to worry about whose bike it was, right? So that was his way of forward thinking. And my dad was absolute visionary. He was the one who was the founder of the Electronic City. I remember he was the founder chairman of Kionix, Key to Electronics. This was his vision to make it like Silicon Valley. I remember going as a kid, he would bribe me with an ice cream because, from where we lived on Palace Road all the way to Electronic City was like going to a different state altogether. So it's been phenomenal to see that vision of Boulders to what it is today. And they are planning to honor him, with a statue, etc., at Electronic City in the next several months.
What about the women in your family?
The women in my family have been absolutely phenomenal, right? My mother, who turns 90, the only one I get anxious about, in terms of what she's going to say, to me. She had, studied and grew up in Bombay. She did her bachelor's at St. Xavier's, did her master's in sociology, played table tennis for Maharashtra State, has represented India, in terms of women's rights. She was in China many years ago when Hillary Clinton was there. Even today, she runs, she's the part of Inner Wheel, Rotary, Guild of Service, doing a lot of work, in terms of for the villages, a lot of work for women. I can't remember the number of Anganwadis that she has set up, creches she has set up, so that women who are working have a place, for their children. So my mother, continues to be, absolute, I would say, to see her energy and enthusiasm, right? A couple of weeks ago, she said she was in a fashion show at the Rotary Club. So I went, to watch her, and she would be going for practice every single day at 10 o'clock, right? Very, very interesting. And then I was very fortunate to marry into a family where my mother-in-law was a gynecologist. She, at 17, she took a ship from Malaysia, came to Chennai to do her medicine MBBS, then went to England, and was absolutely one of the most accepting people that I have known in my life of me. There were, I don't think there were two people more different than her and me, right? There were times when I would have partied till 4 in the morning. I would be crawling into the house and she would be up because she had just delivered a baby or she was going to deliver a baby and saying a prayer. So I would say, "Good night, Amma," and she would say, "Good morning," right? So it was quite interesting, but never once did she ever question me and what I am as a person, completely, totally accepting of me, very supportive of my career, very supportive of what I did and what I stood for, encouraged me to be myself, and I think that has been really, really huge. And my husband's aunts, I just met them, 93 and 95. The 93-year-old, Dr. Sharda Naik, was the chairman of Delhi Public School. 25 Delhi public schools came under her, feisty as they come. She was the only 16-year-old when Nehru actually unfurled the flag of independence. So she was there on August 15th at midnight, 1947, right? So when you see and you grow up and you're around
So many
such
positive influences.
positive influences, it's a real blessed life.
I'm curious to, see your children, meet your children. I wonder because they have genes of both you and your, husband's, which seems phenomenal. So I'm sure there must be something.
They are. Let me put it this way: they're very good kids. At the end of the day, to me, it's not what they achieve. I think this is a value that both Sid and I are very, very clear about. Are they good human beings, and are they good to other human beings? My daughter, who went to a fancy international school, studied in the US and in the UK, has chosen to take a fellowship with Teach for India. I went to drop her at the school, at the government, aided school. And I was so impressed that she's been there, 10 days and has come back with the empathy for the children in her class, with lovely stories about the children in her class. And to me, that has been, phenomenal to see her blossom into someone, caring and wanting to give back to society early on in life when everybody is worried about the corporate ladder. And she is, of course, worried about, "Mom, how am I going to make money?" So I said, that will also happen. But do what you're passionate about and make sure that you enjoy what you're doing. My son is the hustler, very, very clear. He wants to be an entrepreneur. He's got his startup. Yesterday, we had this come to Jesus conversation because he wanted some help with his startup. And he tells me, you really are unprofessional the way you treat me, right? When you speak to me. If there's something that you'd like for me to know or you need information, this is the process that I follow with my team, and I expect you to follow this process. So I looked at him and I said, "Okay, I'm done." He said, "See, you're behaving like mom right now, right? Would you say I'm done to any other startup founder?" So it's an interesting family, dynamic, and he's bootstrapping, working literally 24/7, and he wants to make it. He's very clear. He wants to make a real success of his startup, and take it to places.
So you've worn many hats, investor, founder, mentor, executive. How do you define success to you personally? I mean, what does success mean to you beyond these obvious milestones?
One of the things that gives me great joy is being a king and queen maker, right? Whether it is the people I have mentored in the corporate world who are in the CXO suite today, or, I've always had a lot of kids come to me, parents actually saying, banging their head against the wall, saying, "Can you do something here and help my child?" Right? I've always given these kids a break. In my several startups, they've come in as interns or their first job was with me. And today, when I keep bumping into them and seeing how well they have done, that gives me the most amount of joy, right? There have been kids who have dropped out of college. I'd helped his sister, and his parents finally came and said, "You're the only person we can come to who can speak to him." And the only condition I had with this kid was that you show up at work every day at 10 and you can leave at 5. And I wanted to see whether he could do it. And he came, shoes polished, dressed smartly. This is the same kid who wouldn't wake up till 5 in the evening, right? So he came at 10. My team members were a little not very happy about it because they said, oh, so and so is not really performing. I said, it's okay, he's showing up. Give him time. He has to adjust to being there from 10 to 5, right? And slowly, by giving him the confidence, Neha, by being able to invest that time and kindness in terms of saying, I do know you're capable of, a lot. That really helped him. Today the boy finished his undergrad, went to Canada, finished his grad, is working in a space that he really enjoys. So to me, that gives me joy that I've been able to really make a difference. For me, any kid, right, who's saying I'm bored, that's the word that I catch. I bring them, they intern, and the kids of today are so smart, right? They're really, really smart. And the ability to treat them as their opinions are valued is very, very important. So I have this whole, everybody calls me LP, Lathika Pai, and they get confused because their moms are friends of mine, right? So and I, go out and hang with the youngsters and then different with their moms. So it's been to me, that's most important. How can I really use my talent in helping the ones who are the underdogs, right? The smart ones will anyway do well. The smart ones will anyways come to me. Of course, I'll help them. But the ones who need that encouragement, who need that support, are ones that I put a lot of time in, and I invest that time in them.
That's wonderful to know. So, what's one decision you've been proud of and one decision you felt that you could have done it differently?
In one of my startups, there was an investor who came from a big family office, and I felt rather intimidated and bullied, right? And with the terms that we had agreed to were being renegotiated, and what was considered to be an equity investment, they wanted to make it debt and kind of change it around because they had already sent us the money before, and I had said, stop, don't send us the money. And they thought that once the money was in the bank, they could negotiate because we would be very happy. Who would send money back? I thought about it and I said, this doesn't let me feel good. Okay, I'm feeling bullied, I'm feeling intimidated. And it was on Diwali day, the banks were interestingly open because in Karnataka, the holidays are different from the north. And I sent the money right back. And thank God for that, right? In terms of being able to stand up and not accept something that's wrong. From a career perspective, I often wonder what my trajectory would have been if I was in the corporate world, especially in the US. I had a very, very accelerated career in the US. And then we moved back to India, and I was part of a very well-funded startup. We had 300 million in funding. 20 years ago, it was cloud ahead of its time. We spent all the 300 million in a year, and that's when I said, okay, let me, do things on my own. I also had 2 young children. My husband had a very, very demanding career. Sid used to run IBM consulting for Europe, Middle East, Africa. So at 29, he had 29 countries. And so one of us had to actually, take a step back. And so sometimes I wonder what life would have been if I had continued in the corporate world. Is it a regret? The answer is absolutely no. I've had wonderful 20 years since then. But it is definitely a question mark, right? In terms of what would have my trajectory been. Most people said, you would never have survived in the corporate world, right? When I joined Microsoft in 2018, the only reason I took that role was because it was to do with startups, right? To me, my passion was startups. Every early stage startup that came my way, needed help, and here was a platform that I had to help and support startups. So
people often talk about your drive, rarely about your values. So, what personal principles have anchored you through your journey?
I would say two. One is gratitude, right? And the second is ichigo ichi, which is living in the moment, right? To me, every day I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everything around me, right? Whether it's my family, whether it's my childhood, whether it's my friends, my relationships. To me, especially my relationships come ahead of everything else. You know, my friends, etc. Living in the moment is something that I always have. You know, at 16, I would say, oh, I don't know how much time I have, and my dad would look at me and said, "You're 16." Right? Why do you? But I always live in the moment. Like I enjoy wherever I am, and I enjoy the moment, and I enjoy what I'm doing. I don't think about, you know, next time, next year. There are certain things you push out, but to me, I really live in the moment. I try to look at what is positive, you know, even in terms of adversity. I look and say, okay, this could have been worse, right? But here's what happened, you know, and that has held me in great stead, right? So, you know,
So you see the glass half full.
yeah, most of the time it's almost three-quarter full, right? More than half full. Because I feel there has been an abundance of so many other things that I have in my life that nothing is really that big a deal in the grand scheme of things.
And what is your leadership mantra? What leadership traits have served you best across the various roles that you've played in corporate, in non-profit, startups?
I think the leadership traits that I know have worked is being respectful, right? The most important, like I mentioned, whether it's a 14-year-old kid who's giving me his or her opinion, or somebody more senior to me giving me their opinions, right? To me, being respectful of every input and listening to that person's input has been very, very important. You know, interestingly, when I was in the US, I was friends with every secretary in the organization, right? I would be kind, you know, to the person who opened the door, to the secretaries, etc. So when I started my first startup, I needed to get in touch with some key people in Denver whom I lived. I wanted to go and meet. And their calendars were all 6 months out, 9 months out, typical US style, you know. I remember Marge. Marge and I were buddies. I messaged Marge from India. She remembered me. I said, Marge, I want to get on the calendar of the president of AT&T, Quest. You know, she said, honey, tell me whom you want to be in touch with. Okay. Next thing I know, I said, these are my dates and these dates work for me because I'm coming in from India. And she immediately, all calendars were opened, right? So it is a matter of not worrying about all the people who are there, but being kind to people, you know, who are around you. So to me, that's very, very important. You know, respect and being kind is very important as a leadership trait. I will be transparent. I will tell you the way it is. It is what it is, right? I've learned over the years to be more gentle. In the US, my American bosses would call me Indira, as in Indira Gandhi, because I was fearless. I was 31 years old, and I would just say whatever I had to say. And, you know, I had some interesting times in the US where they would just look at me and I would never be intimidated, you know, bullied or forced into doing something that I didn't want to. And the most important part is, have I been true to myself? What is keeping me up at night? Is this worthy of being kept up at night? Right? And that's something that has been very important.
As someone who successfully raised both equity and debt funding, what do you feel are the common mistakes most early entrepreneurs make?
So I've made several mistakes as an early entrepreneur. There is this, you know, common term wag and swag. Wag is wild ass guess. You just put some number in. So, and then the swag is a scientific wild ass guess, right? And what you realize is the wag and the swag both don't really work, you know, when you're building a business. So that's something that I've learned. along the way in terms of what works, what doesn't work, and what you need to do, and how to kind of now coach and advise founders. I see founders with their spreadsheets who come to me and said, okay, our revenues were 3 crores this year, but next year we're going to get to 30 crores. And I'm like, okay, how are you going to go from 3 to 30? It's a great spreadsheet number. But the reality is, that your deals take so much time. Yes, you have maybe more people, and but my famous quote that I've used many a time is 9 women can't make a baby in a month, right? So it does take time. You may be able to kind of take it forward because you've got funding, but you can't jump from 3 to 30.
So, how has the funding landscape evolved, according to you, for women-led startups?
So here's the good news. There is been the needle has definitely moved since I raised money way back 20 years ago in terms of the number of women entrepreneurs who are raising funding. Of the 150 plus unicorns that we have today, at least 30% plus have a woman co-founder, right? And if you look at Falguni Nair today, of Nykaa, she's great in terms of what she has done in 10 years. Is it a level playing field for women entrepreneurs and men? I would say not yet. Not here, not anywhere in the world. What do I mean by that? So if there are bros who get together from the IITs and they need, seed capital and money and introductions, the bros are likely to get it more than the women entrepreneurs, right? The reality is that women entrepreneurs have to be that much more, I would say, with their business plan in terms of it being something that the VCs are willing to, or angel investors are going to be wanting to invest in. So that level playing field is quite a bit away, right? But the good news is that from what in 10 years, the number of women who have gotten funded is fantastic. At SonderConnect, we've helped 165 startups, more than 200 plus women founders. Almost 35 of them have raised over $100 million together, right? So to me, that is just in our own world. We've seen this happening, right? Can we do more? Absolutely. That's something that's why I believe. That's why I'm so passionate about this in terms of what is it. And one thing which is important here is that most people think that funding is the most important part in an entrepreneurial journey. It's only one. What's really important is the guidance, the network, access to markets, access to business, which is very, very important, right? And that to me is the focus. At Sonder Connect, if I look at Sonder 2.0, 1.0 was, the 10 years. This is where we are today, like I mentioned earlier. I would like to help 1,000 women founders, right? Even if they get to $1 million in revenue. They haven't raised funding. They need access to debt capital, 3 months of working capital. That's great. Not everybody has to raise money, right? In fact, the times when I raised money was created the most challenge, for me, right? Because you tend to take decisions which are not necessarily the best. Whereas when you're bootstrapped, you'll end up becoming that much more careful about how you are building your business and taking, I would say, risks that are manageable, right? And so that's why it's important. So talking about Sonder 2.0, helping 1,000 women founders, getting them to $1 million, it's a multi-billion-dollar platform that we've built, and helped over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's my vision, to say create more founders who are self-sustaining, who are in business, creating jobs. To me, that is more exciting. Of the 1,000, if 50 of them raise funding, great, or more power to them. But funding should not be looked at as criteria in terms of how you measure success of the entrepreneur.
And is there any one women entrepreneur you're following closely?
At SonderConnect, it's like asking me who my favorite child is, right? In terms of how they're doing. But let me give you a few names that are doing some very, very interesting work. Manjari Bakre from OncoStem Diagnostics, right? She's been at it for the past 10 years. She was in her first batch of SonderConnect. We're still in touch. So she's created a cancer diagnostic marker for women who've had breast cancer to see whether they need chemo or not. Okay, now one would think this is slam dunk, yes, let's go. But the reality is that it is a space that takes time. You have to get all the approvals that she has. And I'm hoping that, this is something that is going to really, really help so many tens and thousands of women in our country and across the world who don't have to go through chemo if it's not needed, right? So definitely Manjari is somebody that I'm very, very, I really look at and admire, and her resilience in terms of where she is. Huvu, which is another startup that we work with, which works with the temple and puja flowers that can be kept for 2 weeks. Young girls, Ria and Yashoda Karutari, they're doing, both. One is from Stanford, one is from the US. They're building their business. They were on Shark Tank. Atinchi was on Shark Tank. They got funding from Shark Tank, which is creating diabetic ice creams for diabetics. Fungrow also got funded by Shark Tank. So so across the board we have Alina Alam who runs Mitti Cafe. Alina is phenomenal in what she has done. To me, there is so many. Lakshmi Chowdhury of Splana, fascinating. I love her newsletters. She daily I look forward to reading them. So we really have a fabulous array of founders that are part of the SonderConnect platform. Ambaram, which is a design studio in AI, Zeba Khan, so that's something that I am very excited about. So there's not one for me. It's the entire platform of 120, sorry, 165 plus, right? So
You've supported startups across different regions like Middle East, North Africa, South Asia. What common challenges do female founders face across these markets, and what has your experiences been? Would you like to share?
So, when I joined Microsoft as the managing director for startups for the Middle East and North Africa, I think it was the world's best job because I got to meet startups in all the emerging markets, right? From Pakistan to Lebanon to Egypt, Morocco, Turkey. And wherever I went, I had one request that I also met with women founders, right? So I got a chance to meet, women founders across the board in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka. What was interesting is this is not just women founders, Neha, this is founders. Their startup ecosystems was early stage. And they looked to India in terms of understanding how India has done and become one of the world's, top 3 startup ecosystems, right? So I was so proud. So they didn't want to know what was going on in the US and Silicon Valley or in China, right? They wanted to know what was happening in India and how could they take tips from India and what did they need to do, right? So that was the fascinating part of meeting these founders from across these emerging markets, meeting with investors, people who ran accelerators, government officials. So to me, showing them the India success story, and this was way back in 2018 and 19, right? So it really was quite interesting to see how they took ideas from what was going on from the Indian startup ecosystem.
Glad to know that. And since you work with startups across the globe, do you see any significant improvement in ease of doing business in India?
I believe that the Indian ecosystem has a lot of champions, right? I'm on the board of TiE Delhi, and on the board along with me is Rajan Anandan, you have Sanjeev Bikhchandani, Hitesh Oberoi, Atul Dhawan is the president, Alok Mittal, Kalpana Jain. So there are a lot of us leaders who are part of it and who do a lot for the ecosystem, right? We have TiE, which is very, very active. We have, as far as women founders are concerned, Barney Kola has done a fabulous job with CXXO in terms of investing in women founders. I was part of the governing body. So, In India, there has been a lot of investment, both in terms of time, ecosystem, and money that has gone into it. You have NASSCOM also that goes to the government in terms of hoping to change policy, which we have, right? So there is a lot of support that has been given. The current government is extremely pro startups. METI is a very strong organization. When Jeet was the CEO of METI, I know he did a fabulous job of creating, and supporting, accelerators and incubators and startups. So it really comes down to the fact that there is a lot of investment going on both from the government side and from individuals and organizations and bodies that help startups.
And through Highway to 100 Unicorns, which is above the Bharat project that you did, what has been your experiences like?
In 2018-19, I had a global role, which was the MENA role, India, and spent some time in India. What struck me was that I had a request from all the startup cells from different states saying, could you please come and visit and meet with our startups? And I realized I couldn't go to every place, meet every startup. So that's when it was also the time in 2019 where the unicorn list came out. And in the unicorn list, all of the startups were from either Bangalore or Delhi, maybe a couple from Bombay, right? Because this was where the startup ecosystem was from. What struck me was there were none from any of the tier 2 cities, because the founders were from, say, a Jaipur or a Cochin or a Pune, etc., but they all moved to Bangalore and Delhi to be there because that's where the investors were, that's where the ecosystem was. And so that's when I said, let's create a highway to 100 unicorns for us to be able to work with a set of the most promising startups from these tier 2 cities. The top 10 startups from Kerala, top 10 from Rajasthan, top 10 from Gujarat, top 10 from Goa, Maharashtra. So it was fascinating because we ran the EmergeX competition. We got the 10 people. The state governments were very excited that, Microsoft was coming for these events. We had what we said was that we would bring in investors. We had technology experts, branding experts, whom I reached out to and say, really, you should come and see what's going on in Jaipur or in Goa or in Cochin. So for every event, we made sure that we took, people from either Bangalore or Delhi for these events, right? And then we actually, of the startups selected, we spent time giving them access that they needed without having for them to leave their hometowns, right? They didn't have to leave to come and set up shop in Bangalore. They could stay in Jaipur, they could stay in Cochin, they could stay. And most importantly, for the state governments, this was creating jobs, all right? They were creating, opportunity, employment opportunity, and wealth for their own states. So that's why it was a very, very powerful project. I enjoyed every minute of it, meeting these startup founders. Today, 6 years later, it's lovely to see many of them, how well they are doing. And so I think now the Bharat project is fantastic. So what I did, maybe a small, the pilot, I would say, is now been really scaled up and it's going in, because that's where we want to create employment. We want to create opportunities. We want to create those millionaires in these smaller towns, right? So
I mean, I think, and we hear a lot of stories from Raipur, from, Pune, doing so well. So
absolutely.
like I said, you always think ahead of time, I feel.
I know. I went to Assam. I met with founders there in Guwahati. That people would come down from Mizoram to meet, and so it was really fabulous. And even if you start small, right? You start small. You start with a few. So I love the scale with which the Bharat project is looking at in terms of supporting these founders.
And any particular story that sits with you from the tier 2 cities?
For example, there was a startup founder who had created IoT devices in terms of wear and tear of tires, right? Because you need to know ahead of time in terms of truck drivers, in terms of the or all these transportation cargo that was being sent, etc. And starting with this one idea, which I think started in college, and how it grew, where today lakhs and lakhs of tires are being managed and monitored. Right, this came out of Jaipur. Another startup in its early stage that I helped and supported was through Project Amplify along with Accenture, which was in the climate and sustainability space, was FluxGen. FluxGen was monitoring water and making sure that every drop of water was counted and you didn't have this leakage that happened. They have probably saved the planet today, billions and billions of liters of water, right? Something which is that's important. And so that was something that was very, very exciting to see how FluxGen has scaled. So again, I've met thousands of founders. These are just a couple of names.
And they're making a social difference too.
Absolutely. I think that to me is very, very important, right? Yeah.
And so you've operated across India, MENA, APAC. Which global trends are currently shaping the next wave of startup innovation, especially in sectors like AI, education, healthcare? And what are other exciting ideas besides AI that you're seeing trending?
So, AI, like everything in the VC world, it becomes a buzzword, right? Now, AI has been around forever. In 1990, in the early 90s, when I worked for Nortel, I was, a software programmer building out advanced intelligent networks, right? AI has been there. But what we have in AI today is that it's been democratized, right? Everyone can now leverage AI. Speech to text, So imagine somebody who is illiterate, who doesn't know, can just speak and get what they need done, right? Commands can be given on the phone. So the fascinating part is how AI can actually take technology to the lowest common denominator. My favorite is UPI, right? If you look at UPI, I never have money with me because whether it's pani puri on the road, you're my auto rickshaw driver, okay, my fruit wala, it's all with Madam QR code, right? And you do it. And to me, that has been a fantastic democratization of technology, right? In terms of taking it to the lowest common denominator. Where do I see? I saw some, fantastic projects coming out of Microsoft Research in terms of working with AI, for retina patients who had got cataracts done, and how could they actually get support while as post-operative care, right? So they had worked with a hospital in terms of creating a bot to help them. I have seen in education, right? Physics wala that has taken education, leveraging AI and bringing it, again to thousands, lakhs of students across the board. So that is the power of being able to use AI and making it available. Today, I love ChatGPT, right? It gives you so much of information that in a comprehensive way, it asks you the questions. So I think that has been the power in terms of being able to work on it. So, how do you use your time better, right? We could have probably spent 3 hours creating these questions, looking at the research. You have someone who's done it for you and given it to you, and you could spend those, you've been given back those hours from a productivity perspective to do what you have to do, right? Because time to me is the most important commodity.
But any other trends you're seeing lately besides AI?
So again, I work with a lot of women entrepreneurs. I love the fact that there are so many people who are out there who are creating various, interesting products, products in sustainable products, right? Very, very clear that they want to make products that are plastic free, that are biodegradable. Bare Necessities, for example, is working in that particular space. We have startups who are creating bags which are non-leather, vegan slippers, vegan bags. So a lot of smaller, I would say, entrepreneurs who are coming out there are using technology just for being online. You have Shopify that helps you do that, etc. Selling through Insta. So to me, it's not just about the technology, the SaaS software, that is out there, that you should look at. We have to create, like I said, my vision is to create 1,000 women entrepreneurs who are there, who some of them in technology, all will leverage technology, right? You can't do without technology, but who build interesting products. My daughter, for example, right now wants to create, products which are all, probiotic in nature. She loves to experiment in terms of sauces, which are good for the gut, etc. Right? So I said, go, do that. This would be a great hobby that can turn into something which is a business, right? So I think that's where the entrepreneurial, ideas, yeah.
So, you've been under tremendous stress lately. How are you handling it? What do you do to de-stress?
Couple of things. From a very young age, I've learned to deal with very well. And I think it goes back to the fact that I lost my father when I was just shy of 22. And, the fact that there has been a life after, the fact that I've had a lot of people come into my life, my husband, for one, my father-in-law who turned, who was like a father to me, my mother-in-law that I mentioned earlier, my brothers, etc. So I feel that I have always had somebody who had his or her hand on me, right? I believe in the higher power in terms of being there for me and doing the right thing, by me. And so that's the first thing that I go within. I look at and realize, things could be worse. I am fortunate, and that's how I deal with stress. More importantly, I love the outdoors. I love to challenge myself. The day after I quit Microsoft, I went on a trek that I signed up with these friends of mine to Nepal. I didn't quite know what I had signed up for. I said trek, okay, but I did wake up and go to Nandi Hills, go up and down. When I reached Nepal, Pokhara, and I started, the first day, like, wow. What I had signed up was higher than Annapurna base. I'd gone for the Mardi Himal trek. And the thing about this trek is that it's like Hotel California. Once you check in, you can't check out. There's no other way. You have to go up and then come down. And it was really, really hard, right? Physically, it was truly mind over matter. We were trekking 8-9 hours. The conditions that there were like one toilet for 40, 50 people. You're there, I would just, no heating, right? No hot water. I would get into my sleeping bag and pass out, right? There was a bucket, not even a bucket, I think, a paint bucket with the hot water. I put some salt to kind of revive myself. So I realized, to me, the outdoors is a great passion, so, I trek, I golf. And my safe space is music. I love music of all genres. I love to DJ. So those are things that I do. I love to travel, and I think I just go, find time to do all of that. That keeps me grounded, keeps me sane. Most importantly, I don't get time to dwell on, should have, could have, would have, and that's how. And I always find interesting and exciting, projects to look forward. Right? I look forward to say, okay, now what can I do with my time? And we have a wonderful idea that my SonderConnect co-founders and all of us have come together in creating the Sonder Collective, which is a platform we plan to launch in hopefully in November, which is a platform to really promote budding not just entrepreneurs and innovators, but budding chefs, budding musicians, budding artists, right? All of the women who need promotion, right? Who need to be recognized, who get it later on in life. So this is something that has brought in all my passions together and creating that platform on and one platform, and that's something that I'm really excited about. I've had discussions with people in France. I was in Paris, where we are talking about a cross pollination of our entrepreneurs going to Paris and founders from France coming to India, women founders. So I think that is the excitement. I look at how can I use my time wisely, productively, in terms of looking forward. So that's how I deal with stress, right? Which is to look at, okay, I am blessed with all these contacts, networks. How do I leverage them for the larger good? This is something that is very important. Everything is about the larger good.
Absolutely. So, what do you have to say to other women leaders navigating corporate pushback in silence?
One of the most important things I think that women leaders have to understand is to create a very solid network of other women. Being there for other women when they need it.
Yeah.
We keep complaining about boys' club. Why is there a boys' club? Because the boys are there for the boys. We keep complaining about it. Are we doing anything about it? The answer is no. Right? She for she is more important. He for she exists today. I have a lot of men who've been supportive to me throughout my career and even now. The women are silent. So unless we change it for women why are women silent? Because they don't have that network. They haven't invested in that network. They haven't created it. And there are women who are out there talking about being there for other women. But, when things hit the fan, right, these women are silent. They don't speak up. Okay? So that to me is the fundamental issue in terms of saying that why are women suffering in silence? You don't need to. But you also, right, it's the karma cycle. What goes around comes around. Right? If you give, you'll get. You will find the people. But if you have to pay it forward. So women leaders, you have to look within and say, have I helped other women when they needed it, when I was in a position to help? And trust me, if you can look within, hand on heart, and say you have, you will have those people come to you when you need it. You don't have to suffer in silence. So that, and this, by the way, definitely for women, I would say that for men too. Right? So that's how, focusing on the female leadership angle, I think that's the reality.
So, in light of mass layoffs and your own experiences, how can large organizations rebuild trust and transparency, especially when letting go of senior leaders?
Layoffs have happened many a time, right? Whether it was 9/11 in 2001 when things went south, 2008 when there was a crash, right? And every time companies do need to do layoffs. I'm not saying that layoffs don't happen, right? In my startups, I've had to lay people off. It is when layoffs happen, it is the way you treat that person being laid off. The companies that have treated these people with respect, with kindness, and giving them the help, right? To say, use me as a reference. Here are, certain headhunters you can meet and speak to, and helping them through the process and say, that is what is going to make a difference, right? It is not about the fact that you're being laid off. You have to make business decisions which are relevant. Absolutely. As a business leader, you cannot say that, that I'm not going to make layoffs, right? So there are times you hear in certain cases saying that we don't have any layoffs. because we've decided to take a 20% cut. Maybe that's the way to go. But in cases where you have to get rid of headcount which is not necessary, and sometimes even if it's necessary because you need to improve the the bottom line of the company, it will happen, not just in India, but globally. So when this layoff happens, it's important that the HR teams, managers who are laying off their people are very, very empathetic.
Yeah.
It's how you make that person feel when that person is being laid off is going to be what people will talk about that company. Not about the great things that the company did for you in the past, but at that moment when that person is walked out of the door, to make that person feel we have not laid you off because you are not meeting our standards, right? This is a part of a larger decision in terms of why you've been laid off, making that person feel that they have a reference from within the company, right? Giving them a support group, in terms of people talking to each other and providing them with leads and saying, hey, these are support groups that you can go to, these are 6 headhunters. That to me is the most important when the layoffs happen, to keep that trust. Yeah. Right? So when you leave a company, to say, okay, I can always use my manager as a reference. Yeah, I can go back to that company if a role opens up. That's what creates a wonderful organization, right? Because they've been honest. To me, transparency, honesty, and the way you make a person feel through the good times, more importantly, through the bad times, is what is really the values that I live for and I look for, right, in organizations.
Very well said, actually. You're someone who's worked with both government and corporate giants. If you had one policy reform to push today for startups for women, what would it be?
For startups, I think there has to be tighter employment laws. I think that's something that one has to really look into in terms of what rights do employees have in the technologies, especially in the technology space today, because most of our employment laws were written when it was public sector, right, in terms of the PSUs. So there are, very clear guidelines in terms of what you can or cannot do, what employees have. Those who are in the labor, under the labor law, they have guidelines. But in this whole ITES sector, right, it's definitely, we don't have very strong employment laws. And I think that's something that must be tightened, that will really, really affect people, who are employed in these organizations, startups, women, across the board, right? I think that's one law that needs to be updated. People need to look at and change.
What does your next chapter look like?
My next chapter is very, very exciting. Right? You can see it in my body language, right? Because of the fact that now I have the time and the ability to bring all my passions together, right? And so I also want to spend time, trekking has become, after I figured I could trek in Nepal and come back alive, and while my knees are still supporting me, I want to trek. I went to Chile, to Patagonia, and trekked the W. It was 22 kilometers, up and down in a day. Went to Japan, went trekking there, did the Kumono-Kodo Trail, which is a 1,000-year religious trail. I want to do the Camino Santiago, which is the religious trail of St. James. So
How
these are
did you know
things,
about this? It's
so
wonderful.
I keep, finding out and doing that. So that's something that I want to do on the personal side. I love to golf. But again, like I mentioned earlier, Sonder Collective is something I am really excited about, because the goal is that we will get women from all 36 states and union territories to be a part of it, so that it's inclusive. The one thing that I'm very big on is inclusiveness. So it's not that only women from Bangalore get to be showcased, women across the board, from athletes to golfers to performers, like I mentioned, and entrepreneurs, right? I mean, why will I not be excited, right? This is so exciting, in terms of bringing it together. So that's my, and that chapter, here's the good news, right? Will keep me busy for a long time. So I'm excited about it.
Through all of this, the high and the conflict, what has stayed constant in you?
My sense of humor, right? The ability to laugh and find something funny is again something I learned from my father. He was dying. We were at St. John's. He looked at me and he was slurring, right? And I said, Dad, you're slurring, because he had a stroke. So he says, oh, the only time I slurred was I was in Jamshedpur or Kolkata in 1953, and it was a very hot afternoon, and somebody gave me a glass to drink. I didn't realize it was gin. I glugged it down and I started slurring. Okay? I said, Dad, slightly different now and where you are, right? And the next thing he says, you better get me home. So I said, why, Dad? He said, because your mother's going to get upset. I said, no, she's already upset. He said, no. It's because one of the nurses may fall for me. And then what do I do? So I said, Dad, in this state, I don't think so, right? So even when few hours before he passed away, right, he had this sense of humor that has come onto me. So what keeps me going truly is finding humor in every situation I am in, right? And that keeps me.
And not take life seriously.
No, I look at the fact that, I have health, I have family, I've been married for 34 years, and I have a man who's extremely supportive of what I have always wanted to do. Really, hats off to Sid. And children who are entertaining, I would say, if not anything else, so good human beings. And my mother's 90, brothers. So, hey, I've really nothing to complain about in life. Only to be grateful.
Wonderful. And finally, if there's one lesson you would hope young women listen and take away from your story, what would that be?
Young women, middle-aged women, older women, find your tribe. Okay? Find your tribe. And that is going to be the most important thing that you could have done for yourself. The tribe is going to be there through your trials and tribulations. The tribe is going to be there through your happy moments. And that's what's going to make your life different.
Wonderful. And it's so well said. Thank you. You're truly an inspiration. I really, really enjoyed this chat with you.
Thank you, Neha, and all the best. I love your podcast and the variety that you bring on to your podcast.
Thank you. Means a lot.
I'm sure we're going to be working together.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
Lathika reminds us that true leadership isn't just about success. It's about integrity and lifting others up as you climb. If this episode resonated with you, don't forget to follow the New Indian Express YouTube channel and share this episode with someone who would be inspired by Lathika's story. Until next time, keep showing up and keep expressing what matters.